Dear students, greetings of the day. This is Chef Kiran Shende, Associate Professor, AISSMS College of Hotel Management, Pune. Welcome you all for my second YouTube video on a chapter called as cookies. Before we get into the topic, this is for your information. This chapter is divided into 3 parts. So this is my humble request to you to watch all the 3 parts so that you understand the chapter well. Let us begin with the chapter on cookies. At the end of this session, you will be able to understand what a cookie is and what are various characteristics of a cookie, which is very important for a student to know. What exactly a cookie is? The word cookie means a small cake, and that's more or less what a cookie is. In fact, some cookies are made from cake batter for some products such as brownies. Hence, it is difficult to know whether to classify them as cakes or to classify them as cookies. But most apparent difference between cakes and cookies are the makeup methods. Now, these makeup methods only divide or bifurcate them into cakes and cookies. Now, if you have seen my video on cake making, you will be able to understand what makeup methods are used for cake manufacture and what makeup methods are going to be used for cookie making. Okay, so these makeup methods we will be understanding in my third sector or third part of cookie chapter. Let us begin with objective number 2 for the session, the characteristics of a cookie. Cookie come in an infinite variety, shapes, sizes, colors, textures. Characteristics that are desirable in some types may not be desirable in others. So be it, for example, some cookies are soft, some cookies are chewy, some cookies are gooey, some cookies spread so much during baking. So all these are various characteristics. Every cookie differ one from the other. The first characteristics is crispiness. Cookie become crisp if they are low in the moisture content. It all depends upon the moisture content in your dough to make the cookie crisp. Various factors contributes to it. Factor number 1, if your mix has low proportion of liquid, that will make your dough stiff. If the proportion of sugar and fat content is more, your cookie tends to get crisp. Factor number 3, baking long enough will evaporate more amount of moisture from the cookie and make it dry. Factor number 4, if it is small and thin in size, so that the cookie dries faster during the baking process. Factor number 5, most important for every cookie, proper storage. If you don't store it correctly, it tends to absorb moisture and this cookie may turn soft. It will lose upon its crispiness. The classic example in crispy cookie category is ginger biscuits. Let us understand characteristic number 2, that is softness. Now this is exactly opposite the crispiness. Softness, some factors are high proportion of liquid in the mix. If the mix has low sugar and low amount of fat, and if you use liquid sugars, for example molasses, for example corn syrup, honey, if you include that in the formula, which is very hygroscopic in nature, absorbs moisture from the air and makes the cookie soft. If large sizes or thick shapes are cut or baked, that will make the cookie more soft. Factor number 5, soft cookie can become dry if they are not stored properly. Like I said you earlier, storing of any cookie is much more important. The classic example of a softer cookie and a gooey cookie is brownie. It's a very classical example. The third characteristics is chewiness. How do you make a cookie chewy? Moisture is necessary for chewiness, but other factors are also important. In other words, all chewy cookies are soft, but not all soft cookies are chewy. It's a very important term to understand and remember. Few factors which influences high sugar and liquid content in the formula. If high proportions of eggs are used in the formula, if a strong flour or a or gluten is developed during the mixing process. So for example, if you have mixed it so hard so that the gluten has formed, makes your cookie a bit chewy. The classical example in this category is chocolate chip cookie, which is kind of nice and chewy from inside the moment you bite it. So we are going to see a good video also in the forthcoming slides. The last characteristic of a cookie is spread. Now there are various desirable spreads in some cookie doesn't have a spread. So it depends upon how you want that cookie to be. Several factors which contributes to spread are sugar. High sugar content increases the spread. So let's say, for example, if you use a granulated sugar, it will increase the spread. If you use sugars like castor sugar or a superfine sugar, it will decrease the spread. If you have more amount of leavening agent, chemical leaveners by means of baking soda or baking powder, if you include in the formula, it will increase the spread. Third factor is the creaming operation. Very important. If you cream the mixture of fat and sugar together like a cake sugar batter method, which will incorporate a lot many air inside, will make or increase the spread of your cookie. So ideally, you should be just blending the fat and the sugar together to a paste without incorporating more air into it. So that will reduce the chances of spread. Characteristics number 4, temperature. Low oven temperature will always increase the spread. So it is always said that bake the cookies at a higher temperature for a shorter period of time. Why it is done? Higher temperature decreases the spread because the cookie sets up before it has a chance to spread too much. Number 5, liquid. If your batter is slack, it tends to spread more. Factor number 6, flour. The quality of refined flour plays a very vital role here. Strong flour or activation of gluten decreases the spread. But most importantly, the pan grease plays a very important role. Cookie spreads more if baked on a heavily greased pan. It is ideally, you should be using parchment paper to bake the cookie nice from inside. On that note, let us see a beautiful video on cookie making.
Let's be honest, chocolate chip cookies are always good, but when you have a really, really good one, it's life-changing. We pretty much bought all the chocolate chips in New York City. We baked, we tested, we ate, and now we have the ultimate chocolate chip recipe for you. We're gonna ball out with a few extra flavors, but really all you need for cookies are sugar, flour, fat, eggs, and chocolate. And on our quest to find the best, we had to test out what all of these ingredients do to a cookie and how we can use their best properties to come up with the ultimate recipe. Let's talk sugar. So we've got white sugar, light brown sugar, and dark brown sugar. Really the only difference is the addition of molasses. Light brown sugar has a bit of molasses and dark brown has a bit more molasses in it. For this test, we wanted to see what just using one sugar in each dough would do to a cookie. With all white sugar, spread the most, didn't have a ton of flavor. Light brown sugar was a little bit chewier, spread a little bit less, and the dark brown sugar was really overpowering in its flavor and spread the least. And visually, you can see a big difference too. And what we found was you really can't get that classic flavor just using one. Next thing we had to tackle is flour. So we've got all-purpose, bread flour, and cake flour. Really the only difference here is the amount of protein and therefore gluten in these flours. Just think about it like this. Bread's like really nice and chewy, has a great texture, great structure, having that gluten and protein. Whereas cake, you think of it as tender, it's light, it's airy, it's gonna have less of those things. What it really comes down to is taste and texture. All-purpose gave you, standard cookie. The bread flour led to a significantly chewier cookie. The cake flour was the one that really spread the most. It was pretty delicate. And then similar to sugar, we decided that in order to get the best result, you gotta use a combination of two. So on to fat. We wanted to see the difference between softened butter and melted butter. And then we wanted to see what would happen if we switched it out completely and used coconut oil. Between softened butter and melted butter, visually they look pretty similar. The melted butter spread a little bit more. And then taste, we didn't notice a huge difference either. Tested with coconut oil and it worked. It was a cookie. But it lost like that great oomph, that butter brings to all baked goods. And so in the end, we definitely prefer using butter. Eggs, we went pretty simple with this one. Just an egg and an egg yolk contributes to more of like a fudgier, richer cookie. Obviously, we're making chocolate chip cookies. We have to have chocolate chips. But we're also going to add a little bit something extra with some chunks of dark chocolate. Cut it with a serrated knife into little chunks and add that to your dough. It's really nice because you have like a variance of flavors and textures throughout. It's really just a few fundamental ingredients and learning how to master their properties in order to get the best result that you're after. And finally, after all that testing, we came up with our ultimate recipe. Here we go. So we're going to start by sifting out the flour. We're going to do all-purpose and bread flour, salt and baking soda as well. We really liked the chew factor of the bread flour with a combination of all-purpose to kind of give us best of both worlds. And then we're going to move on to the butter. So we're going to do melted butter, but we're going to take it one step further and brown it. All you need to do to make brown butter is throw it all in the saucepan and get it to a boil. After a few minutes of boiling, the milk solids in the butter are going to start to toast and turn a really gorgeous brown, nutty color. Keep stirring it to make sure that the butter is browning evenly, and once you can see the really dark brown bits on the bottom, you're going to pour it off, ideally into a liquid measuring cup. This is going to do two things. One, it's going to quickly cool down the butter so it stops the cooking. You don't want to burn it. And then also we want to make sure that we have a cup of liquid when it's all said and done. So while making the brown butter, you do end up boiling off a good amount of liquid. So we're just going to top it up with a bit of water until we reach 1 cup. So just let it chill out for a bit, come to room temperature before you proceed. So we found that we really need a combination of white and dark brown sugar to get that really great flavor that we were after. So add the vanilla at this point and the espresso powder. The espresso powder is one of those little flavor boosters. Again, all about those contrasting notes that really work well with anything really sweet. And then you're going to add in that liquid gold. Oh my gosh, so nice. And cream those together. This is another reason why we want the butter to be a little bit on the cooler side and incorporates really, really nicely with the sugar. When we were testing, if you add the brown butter when it's too hot, it can make the dough a little bit greasy. Then in go the egg and the egg yolk. Ugh, and the smell that comes off this thing, oh my god, it's pretty much like the best smell you can get from cooking. And then go the flour. We like to do it in about thirds or so, just so they don't have flour going all over your kitchen. And just beat it until you don't see a ton of extra flour. It doesn't need to be totally incorporated. A little bit of flour that's not incorporated is actually good. You'll finish incorporating the rest of the flour when you fold in the chocolate. The nice thing about using these chunks is that you get some small shards of chocolate that kind of get everywhere, mixed with the chopped up chocolate chunks, and it's just kind of like, oh, so good. And that's it. That's your dough. Try not to eat it all when it's raw. All right, so if you're an A+ student, you can go ahead and put these in the fridge to chill overnight. You'll get the best flavor that way, but if you have no self-restraint like me, you can bake them off right now. The nice thing about this dough is it has so much flavor that we've built into it that they're still going to be really, really good if you bake them right away. If you are going to be amazing and put them in the fridge overnight, we do recommend scooping them first and putting them on a baking sheet, then putting them in the fridge. It's just so much easier than trying to scoop a really hard dough from the fridge. Cookies are kind of the equalizer of all baked goods. You know, there's so much fancy stuff out there, but honestly, is there anything better than a perfect chocolate chip cookie? Just look at that. You've got these pockets of chocolate from using those big chocolate chunks. It's got all the cracks and crinkles that you want in a chocolate chip cookie. The center's ooey gooey. The outside is crunchy. It's just got kind of like all the flavor and texture that you could possibly pack into one little cookie. And you'll never go back to another recipe again. There's a list of like top 5 smells in the culinary world, and I'm pretty sure butter comes up number 1 all the time. And this is just a list I made up, but
I was gonna say, what?
It's a top culinary list. Ask anyone. Oh my god, brown butter? It's so good.
So isn't it a great video, students? Make sure you subscribe to the channel and see some beautiful recipes. So what is the gist of the entire video was to feel and understand how important are the ingredients and how important part it plays to have a perfect cookie. On that very note, let us have a quick review or a quiz which will make you understand the level of your understanding today. So my question number 1 to you is, which cookie have a low proportion of liquid in the mix and are made from stiff dough? The options are chewy cookies, crisp cookies, and soft cookies. Think, students, the answer will be shortly given to you. Question number 2, true or false? Cookies spread more if baked on a heavily greased pan. Is the statement true or is the statement false? We'll find out the answer shortly. The solution to question number 1 is crisp cookie. You thought it right. The solution for question number 2 is the statement absolutely is true. Cookies spread more if evenly baked on a greased pans. These are few references which are referred for making of this video, and the video which I have shown it to you of brown butter and chocolate chip cookies is taken from buzzfeed.com. All the images which are used for making of this video are labeled for reuse Google Images. On that note, we have come to the end of the chapter first segment, that is cookie 1, which has the basic information. Now, dear all students, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all again in the next segment of the topic, that is cookies 2, in which we will discuss and understand what are the methods of making and how panning, baking and cooling plays a vital role in the video, in the cookie making. Thank you very much for watching this video. Have a nice day ahead. Thank you very much.